Today, Dr. Victor Osakwe will be taking us through the rigors of depression and suicide. Sounds familiar? You'll be shocked at what you think you know and what you don't. So join me on this discovery. My name is Edakwele and we are discussing depression and suicide with Dr. Victor Osakwe today.
Thank you.
Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So today we want to look at depression and suicide because it is very alarming in our society, the rate that it is going. Please let's hear what actually is depression.
All right. Yeah. Depression can be said to be a mental health problem or a mental disorder, which by that I mean is an illness, it's a sickness, which is very common, and it has its characteristics, symptoms. There are things you see and then you're able to say this is depression, and some of these things they are a wide range of symptoms, some of which I'm going to list now. Some of the symptoms you can look at them in terms of the ones that are core or major symptoms, and then the ones that we call minor or lesser symptoms.
Okay, let's take the minor symptoms.
Well, the minor symptoms, when we're talking about the minor symptoms, we're talking about things as simple as sleep. I no longer sleep well. My sleep is very poor. I usually sleep from 6 to 8 hours before, but now I can't sleep for more than 2-3 hours. I eat my bed and I can't get sleep. And maybe when I eventually get sleep, I stay in my bed 2 to 3 hours, a lot of thoughts ruminating, and then I finally get sleep. And by in another 2-3 hours, I'm up very early before the morning. That's one minor symptom, but it's a common thing that people will come to you. A patient may actually come to you as a mental health professional, first of all, to tell you I don't sleep well, And then the other minor symptoms, things like appetite. Some persons will lose appetite so bad, and they just don't understand why. It's not because of any other illness, but they just don't have appetite, even for their best meals. That can happen. But there's another part to that. Some persons tend to eat a lot. So when you find that change in your appetite, that can be a problem.
It's always the extreme.
Yeah, the extreme. Even for the sleep, I forgot to say, it could also be on two extremes. Either you're not sleeping too well or you're oversleeping, what they call hypersomnia kind of in medicine. Now, other minor symptoms range from things like majorly ideas, maybe ideas of worthlessness.
Ideas of
worthlessness. The person feels worthless.
Worthless.
Yeah, he tries to look at himself in comparison to his environment and to other persons. He just feels like, look, nothing is just happening. I don't belong here. There's this whole worthlessness that a person can experience. Those are symptoms they put on the other side as minor symptoms. Other symptoms could look reduced self-worth. It's a common thing. Somebody who goes out is an outing type of person who loves to enjoy and go around with people. All of a sudden, he just stays away from people. He's a little bit withdrawn, and the reason is because he doesn't feel like himself when he's with people. He feels less than himself. That is a symptom you can find. And then the ideas of suicidal ideations now come in here. As you see, the connection is even a symptom you can find as one of the symptoms even in depression in itself. So suicidal ideation, someone is thinking of dying.
We look at the minor.
Yeah, well, the core symptoms are also they are commonplace things, and there are things you could hear. Now, I wouldn't want to start with somebody who is sad and unhappy. That's the core symptom. The person just tells you I'm unhappy. But let me talk about the other two, because there are three symptoms. The other two are weakness. You just feel weak. Let me use the word unduly weak. You know that this weakness is not due to exertion. You didn't do any activity. I need to work so hard to feel tired.
Your blood is okay.
Yeah, you're just there, you're just tired. You wake up in the morning, you're tired, and not that you worked the previous night, but then not that you have other symptoms like a fever or something, but you're just weak and tired. Now that tiredness kind of like you just don't want to get out of bed. You walk, some persons, this is how it goes. Some persons who are professionals who go to work will still want to go to work. Like, you need your pay, you need your salary, but the truth is you're actually too tired to go to work. You don't just feel like it. Now that kind of,
you don't have the drive to do anything.
Yeah, it's more like a weakness. Now, someone will put it like this. One of my colleagues put it like this one time, which is very interesting. Now, when somebody comes to me and says, I'm weak, it's okay. That weakness, is this internal weakness or external weakness? It's more like you're saying you're weak, but you know that this is not, it doesn't have to do with me not being fit per se, but it has to be with me not just having enough energy to do anything I want to do. So that's one symptom you can find. And some persons characteristically, they will tell you that, oh, when I wake up in the morning, I'm so weak, but subsequently as the day goes on, I start becoming stronger. You know, that's classic. You know, find it in depression. You also have things like another core symptom, which is also there, is apart from the weakness, is loss of interest.
So what are the possible triggers?
Yeah, the triggers for having a depressive illness or having depression, they are varied. You can say they are multifactorial, as there are many factors that can come together to say, okay, somebody now can come down depressed. That means, what I'm trying to say is that we have factors that you can call biological factors, and then we also have factors that we can call psychosocial factors. Now, psychological factors are factors that have to do with the way a person thinks. Okay, some people have talked about factors around that to talked about things like coping skills, or my coping strategies. How do I cope with situations around my life? You know, factors that have to do with your cognitive appraisal. I will explain what I mean. The way you think and analyze things may be a factor that may predispose or precipitate depression in a person. And then the social factors, which are the ones who are mostly which we are more used to, are commonplace factors: a loss of a loved one, you know, sudden loss of job or things like that, onset of a chronic illness, somebody just suddenly diagnosed with something terrible, you know, loneliness, you get feelings of entrapment. You know, these are some of the things that you want to look around social factors. You know, difficult circumstances. Yeah, that's like it. Difficult circumstances. You know, somebody going through, you know, things as financial difficulties.
Okay,
and all that, and then social factors.
Let's take a break. When we come back, you will explain more on the coping skills. And
Okay, good. All right.
Stay with us, we'll be right back.
And again, I like to say at this point that there are skills which we call the maladaptive coping skills, and then the ones we call the adaptive ones. You know, suicide in itself have been looked at by some persons as a maladaptive way to cope with stress.
It's the end of the show.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing suicide and depression with Dr. Victor Osakwe. Doctor, we're talking the coping skills. What are the skills that one can use?
Okay, well, generally, coping skills are divided into different groups. We have skills that are called cognitive. They are cognitive skills which we use to cope. Like, you know what it means, coping. How do I cope with difficult situations? What are the ways I go about it? So they are usually what we call the cognitive skills. They are also the ones that are called the behavioral skills. You know, now basically what they are is usually like when and again, I like to say at this point that there are skills which we call the maladaptive coping skills, and then the ones we call the adaptive ones. You know, suicide in itself have been looked at by some persons as a maladaptive way to cope with stress. You understand? With stress, with problems, or even depression, as it were. You know, other maladaptive skills which people used to cope include getting into alcohol and drugs. You know, so for some people they get into all sorts of things, all sorts of vices.
So let's get that point correct.
Yeah.
This maladaptive skills is, explain more.
Yeah, what I mean by maladaptive skills, what coping skills actually are, they are ways. People have said it has been looked at. They are both physiological and behavioral ways with which we cope with situations that we're facing.
Looking at the maladaptive skills, if you see someone that just maybe wasn't smoking before or wasn't passing a lot before, this kind of thing, that should be like a telltale sign.
Some of the times, yeah, or most of the time, it could be a
But if
telltale
you go to
sign.
that person, like maybe let's say the person likes to party suddenly, and you say, guy, it's like you have, you need to say that.
Well, this is how it goes. Usually, some people, one very classic thing about depression, I like to state here, or something we always see, a depressed person most of the time will cry out for help somehow. He wants to be helped. It's not a situation that he or she enjoys. That's depression, because this person is in touch with reality. So because I'm in touch with reality, I know that this is not me and this is not correct, this is not the way I should live. Unlike other spectrum of things we treat in psychiatry, where we talk about people who are psychotic, somebody who is not in touch with reality. But most of the time, a depressed person is in touch. Although there's also another group of persons with depression who could have psychotic symptoms. But generally, if you have depression and you don't have the psychotic symptoms like that, you're in touch with reality. So there's always you wanting, you need help. So it's in mental health, amongst mental health problems that we treat, or disorders we treat. Depressed patients can walk to the hospital themselves and say, look, doctor, look, I can't sleep. Doctor, I can't eat well. Doctor, I don't enjoy my life. You understand? So there's always this, knowing that something is going on and you're needing help. So some of the times, a depressed person may be ready to talk. So if maybe your peers or your family person, somebody in your family and all that, you just notice, oh, this guy is changed, he's a little bit withdrawn, he doesn't enjoy going to work, those things that he does, some of those symptoms, at least you see them, you're like, if you engage such a person, you may actually be able to find out a little bit more that this person may be depressed, and that advice for seeing a professional could come in handy at other point.
So if a depressed person is not taken care of in time, it can actually lead to suicide?
Yes.
Or what
As
else?
it were, I'm going to I would at this point give some figures and facts so you understand. It's been said that up to 50%,
50%.
which is like half of persons persons who attempted suicide, okay, or had completed suicide. By complete means he finished and died. Now,
You didn't just try it.
he didn't just try and
Finished.
finish. Now, up to about 50% of such persons would have been depressed.
Right.
Do you understand? That shows you the significance in terms of connection between depression and suicide. However, people have argued that it may not just be the depression that eventually leads to the suicide. This is where I will talk about many of the relationships, that there are other factors that may have also combined with the fact that I am depressed. Okay, I am depressed now and I'm not getting treatment, or I'm getting treatment. There are other factors that may combine to now make me commit, attempt a suicide or complete it, as it were. So now, but already the link is established and it cannot be argued against. Up to 50% of persons
It's linked to depression.
who had committed suicide would have probably have had depression or a depressive illness.
Let's talk more about the suicide itself. We are talking depression and suicide.
Yeah, okay.
Let's dwell more on suicide. At what point will it get to?
And somebody will eventually do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is it.
Someone doesn't just wake up and commit suicide.
Well, yeah, agreed. There are a lot of theories, there are a lot of explanations that people have put forward. People have looked at the circumstances that could lead to suicide in different ways. People have looked at the different components that will happen before it eventually happens. Many theories, but I kind of there's the leading theory right now is what they call the integrated motivational volitional model or theory of suicide. I would explain. Integrated means, okay, they have brought in a lot of theories and a lot of factors together. But the major things you're looking at here that eventually would lead to suicide are things that we call motivational factors. That's okay. What can motivate? And this is where this is the place where we have things like the moderators. That's where we can work as a mental health practitioner, as a the general population, anybody, because they are under the motivational factors. We have things that are moderators. They are variables. They are not fixed. So there are moderators around there that can be touched, that something can be done about. And also we talk about volitional factors. The volitional factors can also be, one or two things can be done about that, but those include things like impulsivity and the rest of it. Things like, impulsivity, the lack of fear of death, things like that. While under the motivational factors, we have a lot of other factors, which are things like the feelings of entrapment, feeling of loneliness, some of those factors are things that we can work. People, you notice that this person is having this, you can work on to probably, not to prevent suicide in itself from happening. Most of the time, if there's an issue of intimate partner violence, there are a lot of ways you can approach it.
One of the ways is that you call a family meeting. Doctor, let's take a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll dwell more on this. You stay with us. We'll be right back.
The first thing is to identify, as a practitioner, a mental health practitioner, a mental health person at whatever level. The first thing is to be able to identify that this is there, and this is a precipitating factor. This is causing, or either it's causing directly, or it's worsening it, or it's making it to last.
It's the end up with the show. Oh.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing depression and suicide with Dr. Victor Osakwe. Doctor, we were talking about how to handle maybe violence in marriage, depressed.
Patients, like I was saying, there are a number of interventions that can be done. But first of all, the first thing is to identify, as a practitioner, a mental health practitioner, a mental health person at whatever level, the first thing is to be able to identify that this is there. And this is a precipitating factor. This is causing, or either it's causing directly, or it's worsening it, or it's making it to last. So when you have identified, the next thing you want to do is you want to intervene. After doing your identification and doing your analysis of the problem, how deep is this problem, what are the drivers and all that, then the next thing you want to now intervene. How do you intervene? Various ways. It could be to speak to the person in terms of changing our cognitive makeup. She might have cognitive distortions of mindset and all that.
What do you mean by cognitive makeup? Explain that.
Yeah, but I simply mean the way you are thinking.
Like
the way
how?
A person thinks.
If I'm thinking that I was taught that marriage is forever and the man is...
as much as
how do I change? How do I change that?
All right, beautiful. As much as you know that nobody is not encouraged for violence to be in the home, some of the times what may be driving the illness in a person may be the way the person thinks about whatever is happening in his or her home.
Let's take it practically. Let's say a woman that is in an abusive relationship, violently abusive. How can she change her thinking? Because maybe this woman has been brought up to think that marriage is everything. It's a do or die. It's a forever.
Whether they kill you, you should even stay there.
Yes, because in some societies, you go back, you tell your parents, the man is beating me. They first ask, does he pay your children's school fees? Does he feed you? If you answer yes, now go back to your husband's house. So how will you change that woman's thinking?
Some of the things you've just said are you just mentioned thinking styles. Like, okay, I'm married, I have to stay here forever, I have to die here, whatever it is. That's a thought pattern. So I need to bring other thought patterns to, like, can you see life differently?
Okay, can I see life differently?
Could you're married, you don't want your marriage to break, you don't want to scatter your marriage, you don't want to be, there are chances of taking a break from your home for a while does not mean you have broken your marriage. Have you looked at that option? Have you looked at the option that, okay, my marriage might be like this? Because some persons actually have a focus of control, which is they think they cause everything. So the man is beating her, and she thinks I'm the cause of this beating. So you want to look at, okay, is she having this internal locus of control? She think blame ourselves for everything. So you want to work on that. Those are some of the ways that are person directed, that your patient directed,
Bottom line, the person needs needs a professional. The person
yes,
should go to a professional.
Yeah, and there are also social
Yes.
welfare ways you can deal with this.
Yeah.
It's a crime.
Yeah.
It can be reported. It's a reportable offense in the country.
If
So
anybody is
reported.
going through that, we should seek
so
out
there's a
for a
lot of
professional.
people, but professionals can
Yeah.
assist.
Now,
yeah.
doctor, for lack of time, how can a depressed person be helped?
Beautiful. Now, first of all, I would like to say at this point that what you can do is depression is treatable. You can manage it. Okay, just like you can treat many illnesses, you can also treat it. So you can get to meet a mental health professional. When I say mental health professional, I'm not talking about people like, I'm not just talking of us. Before you even get to say a mental health professional, you should just say a health professional, a person, a medical person, as it were. Because even part of what we do in Lagos State is to even train the primary health care doctors and workers on identifying
recognize
depression
it, yeah.
and all that. And at that level, there's the amount of treatment they can do. There's a lot. There's even the primary healthcare integration programs that is encouraged by World WHO, World Health Organization. So at the primary healthcare level, treatment can even start. So that means you may not even need to see a professional, a consultant, or a psychiatrist in the hospital yet. So now you can take that person the person can get to the hospital and speak to the doctor at the nearest health center to his or her place, and that can begin the process of treatment.
Thank you so much, doctor, for this enlightening discussion. I appreciate you.
Welcome.
You stay with us. We'll be right back.